right, guys, so I have our orchestra for week 21. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to attach the music to our email so you guys can hear it, but I'm going to read to you about Brahms. We will be learning about Johannes Brahms, and we're going to discuss 3 things about him: his life story, the time period he lived in, and his music. Johannes Brahms was born in 1833, just a few years after Beethoven died. He was born in Germany and had 1 brother and 1 sister. His mother was a seamstress and his father was a musician. Perhaps this was the reason that why Johannes could play instruments such as the cello, horn, and piano at such a very young age. Johannes loved music, and he even invented his own system for writing notes down on a page. His piano teacher once complained that Johannes could be such a good player, but he will not stop his never-ending composing. Lucky for us, right? By the time he was 10, Johannes Brahms was playing in public, but not in churches or for rich people like Beethoven had done. Instead, Brahms was playing in places such as restaurants and theaters. When he wasn't playing music, he had a variety of hobbies, such as reading novels or reading poetry or perhaps reading folk tales. Did I mention he liked reading? He grew up. Brahms didn't surround himself with rich people, secretly hoping that they could provide him a job. Instead, Brahms surrounded himself with other musicians. This greatly impacted his work. When he was 17, he worked with a violinist from Hungary who introduced him to a gypsy-style music. That relationship ended suddenly when Brahms fell asleep in the middle of someone else's performance. How embarrassing. However, his friend from Hungary did influence one of Brahms' most famous works, the Hungarian Dancers. This tune was so popular that many years later, the American inventor Thomas Edison visited Brahms in Austria and asked if he could record him playing the piano. Another friendship that was important in Brahms' life was that of a married couple, Robert and Clara Schumann. Robert Schumann was a composer, meaning he wrote music, pianist, and an influential music critic who wrote about Brahms and helped to make him famous. He even proclaimed in one of his articles that Brahms was the next Beethoven. Whoa! That made Brahms a little stressed out, to say the least, because he didn't think he was as great as Beethoven was. Robert's wife, Clara Schumann, was one of the most gifted piano players of her time. In fact, she was considered a piano virtuoso, which means she had an amazing gift of skill and exceptional ability. Clara would often play Brahms' compositions at her popular concerts, which also helped to boost his popularity. After Clara's husband passed away, Brahms remained close to Clara and was a supportive friend. Beethoven was known for his fiery temper. Brahms was known for his genuine friendships. One other characteristic Brahms was known for was his unrelenting perfectionism. He would write and rewrite his compositions, finally perfecting them. He also tended to destroy any of his compositions that he didn't feel were perfect. How sad that so many of his amazing works ended up destroyed by his own hands. How many of us has done that? When we've drawn something or done something and we've destroyed it because we didn't think it was good enough. Johannes passed away at the age of 63. As a beloved musician and composer of the Romantic period, his most notable works included one you have probably heard since you were a baby, Lullaby. You could play this song for you guys at home, okay? Time period was romantic. So you remember that, the Romantic period of the arts in our timeline song? Let's talk about for a moment what the time period Brahms lived in, which was the Romantic period. What do you recall about this period from last week's lesson? The Romantic period, people really longed for the good old days. The Industrial Revolution was happening, and many people no longer worked in open fields. Instead, they flocked to the crowded cities and worked in factories. Rather than order and structure like in the classic period, the music became rather more about emotions and feelings, freedom from expression and passion. The piano became popular because it could be produced both loud and soft sounds. Remember how I mentioned that Brahms liked to read? Well, Brahms studied the composers who came before him, especially from the classical period. You could probably ask him any question about Bach, Mozart, Beethoven, or any composer that came before him, and he would know the answer. In other words, being a composer of the Romantic period didn't mean that the beautiful works of the other time periods would be tossed away. Instead, composers of the Romantic period would be inspired by works from the Classical period and the Baroque period, and so on, building upon what previous artists had created. Brahms loved Beethoven and even had a marble statue of him looking down on the spot where he composed. Brahms collected rare copies of Mozart's music. He studied the works of Handel and Bach, finding inspiration in their art. Now that we know more about Johannes Brahms' life, about the Romantic period of music, are you ready to listen to his music? I want you to listen to how his piece has soft, quiet parts and loud, booming parts, which reflect the hallmarks of the Romantic period. I have a listening map I'm going to attach to the email, and I want you to try to follow along to the music. Okay, so this is what your listening map's going to look like. And I know it can be challenging to try to listen along, but I want you to try to do your best to listen along to that map, okay? And if you guys have any questions or anything about the music, remember I'm here. Bye!